The Middle East stands on the edge of catastrophe. A war once fought through proxies has now exploded into a direct confrontation. Missiles thunder through the skies over Tehran and Tel Aviv. Global powers hold their breath as Israel and Iran, two of the most volatile forces in the region, plunge headfirst into a full-scale war. From cyberattacks to drone strikes, from economic sanctions to civilian evacuations, this is the story of how the conflict unfolded, where it is today, and where it could be heading. This is not just a war between two nations. This is a geopolitical earthquake that's shaking the foundations of the entire world. The United States, Russia, China, and the Arab world are watching closely, some intervening, others preparing for the fallout. What began as a series of covert operations and border skirmishes has now evolved into a full-blown, multi-front war. The tensions between Iran and Israel are not new, but in 2024, everything changed. In March, an explosion at the Natanz nuclear facility, widely believed to be the work of Israeli intelligence, sent shockwaves through Tehran's political elite. To understand the flames of war that now engulf the Middle East, we must trace the sparks that led to ignition. The Iran-Israel conflict has never been a traditional war. It was, for decades, a battle fought in shadows, covert assassinations, cyber-sabotage, and proxy militias. But in 2025, the shadow war erupted into broad daylight. The roots of this conflict lie deep within ideological, political, and territorial rivalries. Iran, a Shiite theocracy born out of the 1979 revolution, has long positioned itself as the spiritual leader of Islamic resistance against what it calls Zionist occupation. Israel, a Jewish democratic state, sees Iran not just as a regional rival, but as an existential threat. For Israel, the red line has always been Iran's nuclear ambitions. 2010 to 2020, a decade of tension. Throughout the 2010s, Iran made progress on its nuclear program despite international pressure and multiple rounds of economic sanctions. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action (JCPOA) was signed. Iran agreed to curb its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But Israel never trusted the deal. In 2018, the United States, under President Donald Trump, withdrew from the JCPOA. Sanctions returned. Iran retaliated by increasing uranium enrichment levels far beyond the limits set by the agreement. This raised alarms in Jerusalem. In the following years, a series of covert Israeli operations shocked the world. 2020, Iran's top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, was assassinated in a high-tech ambush, allegedly by Israel. 2021 to 2023, explosions rocked Iranian facilities in Natanz and Isfahan. Iran responded with attacks on Israeli-owned ships and increased support for Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis. But it was only a matter of time before covert operations turned into overt war. 2024, the year of cracks. By early 2024, intelligence sources began reporting increased movement around Iran's Fordo and Natanz nuclear sites. Israel, under Prime Minister Levi Danon, warned the international community Iran is weeks away from a bomb. The Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, denied all allegations. In Tehran, the official narrative framed nuclear advancement as peaceful, but satellite images, leaked intelligence reports, and intercepted communications told another story. The U.S., now led by President Robert C. Maddox, tried to mediate, but Iran refused to allow UN inspectors back into key facilities. In April 2024, Israel launched Operation Shadow Bluma, cyber offensive aimed at paralyzing Iran's nuclear command systems. Iran struck back. On May 3, 2024, a barrage of missiles was fired from southern Lebanon into northern Israel. Hezbollah claimed responsibility, but Israeli officials pointed the finger at Tehran. The Israeli Air Force retaliated by bombing Iranian Quds force bases in Syria. Casualties mounted. International pressure intensified. Then came the explosion that would change everything. The trigger. Natanz, August 17, 2024. Massive explosion rocked the Natanz nuclear site. Reports suggested deep underground centrifuge halls had been obliterated. Iranian state media accused Israel of using micro-drones and internal sabotage. Mossad neither confirmed nor denied. Iran's parliament convened in an emergency session. Crowds flooded the streets of Tehran, chanting death to Israel and Allahu Akbar. The Supreme National Security Council authorized direct retaliation. Within 48 hours, Iranian missiles struck the Israeli air base at Ramat David and hit civilian areas near Haifa. 27 Israelis were killed, including 8 children. For Israel, this was the breaking point. Prime Minister Danon declared, "We are no longer in a Cold War. This is war on our soil, in our skies, and in our hearts." The Knesset authorized full mobilization of the Israeli Defense Forces. For the first time in 30 years, reserve units were activated en masse. Syria and Lebanon ignite. While direct Iran-Israel fire exchanges escalated, other fronts began to ignite. Hezbollah, Iran's strongest regional ally, opened a new front in southern Lebanon. Thousands of rockets rained down on Israeli border towns like Metula, Nahariya, and Kiryat Shmona. Israeli artillery responded with devastating force, targeting Hezbollah positions in Baalbek and Tyre. Meanwhile, in Syria, Iranian militias attacked American forces near Al-Tanf and launched drone attacks at Israeli listening stations in the Golan Heights. Russia, which had troops stationed in Syria, issued warnings but refrained from direct intervention. The Middle East was unraveling fast. The role of proxies. Iran's military doctrine has long relied on the axis of resistance, a network of non-state actors and militant groups spread across the region. Hezbollah in Lebanon, armed with over 100,000 rockets. Hamas and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, rearmed through smuggling tunnels and sea routes. Houthis in Yemen, launched drones toward Eilat and southern Israel. PMF Popular Mobilization Forces in Iraq, attacked U.S. convoys, alleging Israeli collaboration. By late 2024, it was clear this was no longer a cold standoff or even a limited confrontation. It was a multi-front war with global stakes. International response. The international community watched in horror as escalation spiraled. European leaders called for restraint, but few had leverage. China expressed grave concern and warned against American involvement. The United States deployed aircraft carriers to the Persian Gulf in a show of force, hoping to deter Iran without triggering full conflict. But neither side was backing down. On December 1, 2024, Ayatollah Khamenei delivered a fiery sermon from Qom. "We will not kneel before Zionist oppression. This is not just a war for Iran, it is a war for the dignity of all Muslims." On December 3, Prime Minister Danon addressed the Israeli parliament. "We have no desire for war, but we will not live under the shadow of annihilation. Israel will act decisively and without hesitation." With that, both nations moved from confrontation to war. War had begun. On the early morning of January 6, 2025, air raid sirens howled across Tehran, Shiraz, and Qom. Israeli F-35 stealth bombers streaked across the Persian sky, targeting radar systems, missile launchers, and suspected nuclear sites. Within the first 12 hours, over 80 precision strikes were recorded. Israel called it Operation Iron Vow. Israel's strategic strike. The opening assault was swift and surgical. Israel's primary goal: neutralize Iran's ability to retaliate quickly. A series of bunkers in Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo were hit with bunker-buster bombs. Iranian state media claimed that only minimal damage was sustained, but satellite images told a different story. Entire sectors of the Fordo enrichment facility were reduced to rubble. Military airports in Shiraz and Kermanshah were next. Runways were cratered, and fuel depots exploded in raging infernos. Iran's air defense systems, although vast, proved outdated in the face of Israeli electronic warfare that jammed communications and confused radar networks. The first response, Iran's retaliation, came just hours later. At 2:17 a.m., hundreds of missiles launched from Iran's western borders and from Hezbollah-controlled areas in Lebanon. Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Ashdod were among the first targets, though the Iron Dome and David Sling systems intercepted a majority of the missiles. Some slipped through. A missile struck a kindergarten in Netanya, 3 children injured. A hospital in Haifa sustained structural damage. Fires broke out across multiple agricultural settlements near the Golan Heights. Israeli emergency services went into overdrive. Hundreds of thousands were forced into underground shelters. The country had not seen bombardment at this scale since the 2006 Lebanon war, except now. The threat was nationwide. Cyberattacks parallel the strikes. As missiles flew, so did data. Iran launched a massive cyber offensive coordinated by its elite IRGC cyber cores. Israeli financial systems glitched. Power grids temporarily failed in parts of Tel Aviv and Beersheba, and thousands of phone lines were cut across military and civilian channels. In return, Israel's Unit 8200 deployed its most advanced cyber weapons. Iran's domestic air travel was shut down for 48 hours as the ATC systems went offline. Banking apps and digital wallets failed across the country, leading to chaos at ATMs and grocery stores. Both sides began to feel the war not only in bomb shelters, but in every digital transaction, every GPS signal, every locked or failed device. Casualties and damage. By the end of day 2, estimates placed casualties at Iran, 415 killed, over 1,800 injured including dozens of IRGC personnel. Israel, 83 killed, 290 injured primarily due to successful missile hits in residential areas. Infrastructure damage was significant. All refineries in Abadan were ablaze. A major highway in northern Israel was rendered impassable after a drone attack. But the most heartbreaking toll was emotional. Children cried themselves to sleep in bunkers. Hospitals overflowed. Volunteers carried stretchers while under fire. Mothers recorded goodbye videos to their children. The human cost had begun to unfold. International reactions poured in. The global community scrambled to contain the war's spread. United Nations convened an emergency session, urging both countries to enter negotiations. U.S. President Robert C. Maddox issued a televised address. America supports Israel's right to defend itself, but we urge immediate de-escalation before this regional conflict spirals into global catastrophe. China froze all deals with Iran, pending security reassessment. France and Germany offered to host immediate peace talks in Geneva, but neither Iran nor Israel showed signs of retreat. Both leaders had staked national pride, security, and legacy on this war. Hezbollah ups the ante. On January 8th, Hezbollah escalated the war by launching over 2,000 rockets in a single day into Israel's northern cities. Safed, Acre, and Nahariya were pummeled. In response, Israel flattened entire Hezbollah weapons depots in southern Lebanon with drone swarms and airstrikes. One particular strike in the Dahia suburb of Beirut leveled a 10-story building allegedly housing Hezbollah command. Civilian casualties, however, were unavoidable. Lebanese media reported 45 dead, 15 of them children. Protests broke out across Beirut and Tripoli. The Lebanese government, already paralyzed, pleaded for international mediation, but the battlefield was expanding fast.